Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name's Techbandit. Welcome back to this dramatic reading of Batmare Beyond by Tatsuro. Chapter 7, Growth. Bruce watched Rarity carefully over the next few years. While she had asked to be told his story, he was concerned about how learning it would affect her. It had occurred to him that was a distinct possibility that she would follow his example and attempt to don the cape and cowl, as she put it, despite the new suit not having a cape, a safety concern with the increase of jet-propelled vehicles. He needn't have worried, though. Instead, Rarity had chosen to follow her grandparents' footsteps. She dedicated herself to the company and the city, doing all in her power to improve both. She had also thrown herself into the various social events that they were invited to with more verve than Bruce himself had been able to bring to such occasions. He wasn't sure how she managed it, but she remembered everything everyone told her, and was always able to ask polite questions to those she met again that showed it, showing how much she cared about everyone. Whether upper crust, mill merchant, or even Wayne Enterprises' night janitor, she knew them all and showed what with social queries how much she cared. Between this and her own personal dedication to seeing to it that each quarter was better for Wayne Enterprise than the one before, without losing sight of the long-term plans and goals, had led to some interesting water cooler talk. Bruce had overheard some of his employees speaking regretfully of how young Rarity was, and longing for the day when she reached her majority and Bruce turned the company over to her. The fact he discovered her playing dress-up with Ace again when he returned to the office after overhearing that conversation may have contributed to the laughing fit he refused to explain to her. Even through all of this, she still kept up with her martial arts training and her own day trading. Bruce inwardly marveled at how much energy and focus she had. Even for full-grown adults, it was incredible. Either her race was naturally detailed-focused and heavily cerebral, or she had found some means of boosting her already suppressed experience and natural talent. Finally, one day over breakfast, when she was 8, he had to ask, "Rarity," he said, broaching the subject carefully, "you seem to have a real knack for people." Rarity smiled softly. "It's not that difficult, Father," she explained. "Through luck, I've arrived at the peak of the social ladder. When someone that important remembers even small details about you, it makes you feel special. That's all I do, really. With mild small talk, I remind people that whatever their class or monetary status or skills, they matter. And, coming from me, they believe it," she giggled. "Being an adorable unicorn dressed up all pretty to melt hearts certainly doesn't hurt that." Bruce smiled. He'd seen even hardened soldiers at a veterans banquet turn to putty when Rarity made an effort to be cute to win them over. "But how do you remember so many little details? And know so much ahead of time when we go somewhere?" Bruce rubbed the back of his head. "I've tried to do such things, but I confess you seem to have surpassed my limits." Rarity giggled again. "I do my research ahead of time, and made something of a memory aid." Smiling, she levitated her glasses out of the pocket of the blouse she was wearing. She flowed them over to him. They were rather fancy half-moon glasses, more fashionable than functional since Rarity had no eyesight problems. However, seeing her wear them had often made adults around her melt at just how she was trying so hard to be grown up for him. Taking the glasses in hand, he examined them, wondering how they could be such an aid. It didn't take him long to see it. The lenses themselves were actually miniature computer screens on the inside, ready to project information. The power supply was in the frame, more than enough to power it for a full day on an hour's charge. And each bead of the chain was a state-of-the-art mobile drive, each one able to hold a full terabyte of data. I collect everything I learn about someone with their picture and name, Rarity explained. The moment their image is recognized by the lenses, they project the name for me. When I call them by name, the data is called up in order of importance that I dictated based on how they spoke of them when we last chatted, as well as a basic algorithm that sorted the information on basic rules of psychology. She smiled. And if I ever run out of room, I can always attach a few more beads to the chain. Demonstrating, she used her magic to unhook the chain, showing link ports at where the beads connected to plug in even more beads drives. The jacks are also move around the bead so the chain can move fluidly, she explained, while also allowing me to coil them up if I'm going to be engaging in an activity that would run the risk of them being caught on something. Bruce couldn't help but grin at the ingenuity. And you couldn't have had it remotely access a data storage unit at home? Why? He asked, not critically, but curiously. Do you have any idea what that level of data access would do to bandwidth usage at one of the big social events? Rarity asked, shocked. Not to mention the delay of data transfer would be noticeable, and it would be easy to figure out what I was doing. Really? Father, don't be so gauche. Bruce couldn't help but chuckle slightly. It was true that her current setup allowed her to read the data as though she was recalling it from her own mind. A closer look showed that the delay of loading from the drives to the screen was less than the time it took to get through general social pleasantries. He handed the glasses back to her. Very clever, Rarity, he said proudly. I've used systems like this myself for other things, but never quite so compact or easily concealable. Picking up the newspaper, he still insisted on getting hard copy, even if the paper was no longer made from trees. He sighed. Crime rates were on the rise again. After word of Batman pulls a gun got around in the criminal underworld, criminal activity had taken a nosedive to the point that the police could handle it on their own. Bruce had hoped that would last. Then again, it had lasted for 8 years before criminals had taken the absence of Batman as license to start increasing their activities again. Once more, his city was being polluted by crime. Don't even think about it, Father! Rarity spoke out suddenly, an intense scold in her voice. Think about what? Bruce asked, managing to sound innocent. Don't be coy, Father, she repeated incessantly. I know what article is on that page, and I know where your mind would go. I don't care how good of shape you're in for your age. You hung up the cape and cowl because your heart couldn't take it anymore. And no matter how much medicine and my magic has eased it, your heart is still no longer up to fighting crime. She sipped her tea. So don't even think about it. I've been looking up more magical spells online, and while I still can't do much, I can apply a magical seal to prevent you from getting into the Batcave if I have to. Bruce sighed. While the initial spell she used to calm his labored heart when they first met hadn't been needed since, she had also looked into magic she could use to strengthen his heart. As a result, he hadn't had an attack of falter since. Even with the more active lifestyle, Rarity's tastes in socializing, and their combat train forced on him. But the condition that forced him to hang up the cape and cowl hadn't gone away just because he'd learned how to manage it. Turning the page, Bruce decided to bring up something he noticed in Rarity's behavior. You seem to have taken a special interest in the McGinnis family, he commented dryly. Rarity smiled softly. Well, Warren and Mary are such wonderful people. Of course I enjoy their company. Bruce glanced at her over the top edge of his paper. And it just so happens to be coincidental that you've managed, with a few choice words at the right time, to head off several possible marital problems. Rarity shook her head, tossing her mane back over her shoulder. Well, if I did some good, all for the better. Terry certainly deserves a happy family home. Oh yes, their son, Bruce said calmly. He's only a couple of years younger than you. You seem oddly fond of him. Rarity glanced away. He's interesting, she replied dryly. I believe he has a lot of potential. Frowning, Bruce folded his paper and stared directly at her. "What aren't you telling me?" he asked firmly. Rarity shivered slightly, then looked back at him. "It's probably nothing important, but there's something about him I don't quite understand. I was hoping to figure it out before I brought it up." Bruce sat back. "Well, perhaps we can figure it out together," he offered. Rarity sighed. "I suppose. I'm not having much luck, though. I was hoping to solve my first mystery myself." She looked up. "I don't know how else to put it, but he smells like you." Bruce raised an eyebrow. Excuse me?" "But not in the normal sense," Rarity explained. "He doesn't actually smell like you at all. But something in his scent always calls you to mind, for some reason." She shrugged. "I'm not sure what to make of that." Bruce sat back. "I admit I'm not really sure what to make of it either," he shrugged. "This is obviously something unique to your senses. If there is a mystery there, you're the only one who can solve it. Tell me if you do, though." "I shall," Rarity replied, picking up her own paper. "Oh, Femme Fashions is having a sale." Bruce chuckled, rolling his eyes at Rarity's pleasure at shopping sales. Oh, that's another chapter in the book. I do apologize if things don't quite sound like they used to. I'm switched over to a new software, and I'm trying to learn some of the more fine details of it. Though it's coming along nicely, there will be hiccups. It's a learning experience. I apologize. Another chapter down. This was a real interesting one for me, because obviously this hints at a lot of the bigger mysteries, not in Tatsuro's story, but in Batman Beyond itself. No, I won't spoil them for you here. That's another chapter in the book, though. Getting closer to the more interesting chapters. Hey, come on, work with me here. Got a long way to go on this one, but we're starting to get into the more fascinating stuff. And Tatsuro did have a lot of fun with a couple of these chapters that I'm really looking forward to bringing to life. In the meantime, folks, my name's Techbandit. I wish you all good luck, good hunting, and safe travels. I'll catch you in the next one.